Well, and food and design have so much in common, right? Like you talk about texture and contrast and color and form and line and shape and flow. Like these are all things that the greatest chefs are thinking about, right? They're thinking about the detail of how are you plating this? What's your flatware? What glassware do you use to present this type of cocktail or dessert, etc. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. We're so glad you're here, and we're so glad that Ryan is here. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Michelle. Really appreciate it.
I'm really excited to sit down and talk with you long form because we've been working together for a while now. But for anyone who doesn't know you or your business, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Sure. So, my name is Ryan Prang. My company is called Falling Waters Landscape. We are a small boutique landscape design and build studio in Encinitas, California. We help mostly residential clients, whether they have a brand new home and want to make it beautiful, or whether they have an existing home and need to make edits or renovations. We help them from concept to completion.
We love it. And right here, a neighbor practically. Our even knowing each other, I think came through like 6 different people that we had all
Yes.
this crossover with. But talk to me a little bit about the beginning of the business. How did you know that this is what you wanted to do? How did you end up where you're at? It's good to always get the story from the beginning to kind of lay the groundwork for the rest of the episode.
Sure. So I grew up working for my dad. He here in Encinitas had a landscape maintenance company. He mostly took care of high-end residential homes and a few commercial businesses, including the La Valencia Hotel. So he had the hotel as a client from the mid 70s to 2009. We all know what happened that year. So he had the hotel for whatever that is, almost 40 years. And so I grew up going to the hotel. That was kind of my baby. And we made it beautiful. It had 100 rooms. Every room had 7 different living, breathing plant arrangements, whether it was an orchid arrangement or something. So every room had a lot of necessity for maintenance. And then the hotel itself was from the 20s. And so we knew it like the back of our hand and we took care of it. I was there probably 3 days a week. So I grew up at the hotel and worked there until probably about 2006 when I told my dad I wanted to try something else. And he was super supportive and helped me launch the business where we started building water features, and that evolved into around the water feature, and that evolved into, hey, can you help me with my whole project? And so Falling Waters Landscape, that's where we get the name Falling Waters, little ode to Frank Lloyd Wright there. And that's how the business began.
We actually have a lot of crossover in our stories then because my parents similarly started doing like full home flips in 2004 5. So I remember those very like formative years of learning what it means to like work, right? And also to get the real life example of work for yourself. Like my parents would take all 5 of us kids into these flips and say, it's demo day, like start ripping the wallpaper down. Like here, you're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
move these rocks. You know what I mean? Like the actual like labor part of helping with the house, like granted, like scaled to a 12-year-old skill set. But talk about what that did for you. Do you feel like like young people today don't often have that kind of work experience? Because I feel like they do. And it's so different when it's family business. It just becomes part of like what you do. Does that really resonate with you? Or where how did that form your like work ethic and your ethos, like being part of your dad's company so young?
Oh, I mean, it was everything.
Yeah.
I think formed my work ethic. Yeah, that's an onion of a question because I
Yeah.
think it did form my work ethic, and I did feel obligation, not in a bad way, but obligation to help him and work with him, especially the older I got and the older he got. I felt more of an obligation to. And I think it showed me that hard work has results. But I also think, I don't think that's unique necessarily to our age range, kind of growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
I think kids today still have a work
for sure.
ethic. I think it's just different. And, we didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
We didn't have all of the distractions and the pressures. I mean, we did have pressures, but it was different, right? It was different when we were kids. So it was just more understood. Hey, if you want to go to the mall on Friday, you've got to work and save some money and pay for that thing that you want with your own money. And that really resonated with me. And I also really enjoyed the work. I loved being around the hospitality industry. I loved being around the chefs and the valets. And this is an old school hotel. So people lived there. So I was friends
Yeah.
with the residents that lived there. And it taught me how to act around wealthy people, frankly, and which I think really helps me now as I'm dealing with affluent clients. And it was formative experiences for sure.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit more. I think so much of what we learn, again, when you are that 12, 13, 14, like starting to conceptualize what it means to work and work for a living and work for yourself, is those little communication interactions and how you show a client you're taking care of them. Like I learned so much just from being in the car with my mom when she was taking a discovery call, because how I take my discovery calls is 100% modeled on how she takes discovery calls, because I've listened to it 600 times in the decade before I even started a business. So, talk a little bit more about how your communication style serves you in helping your clients, whether it's a small project all the way up to like a full scale project.
So going back to my dad, he's a mild guy. He super slow to anger, slow to respond, but in a good way. And I think that I saw him in multiple different situations. I learned what it meant to sort of be seen but not heard, or kind of disappear into the background, especially in some of those hospitality areas. I saw how he dealt with frustrated hotel management or even frustrated guests. And it definitely informed, I think, how I speak to people, how I communicate, and generally how I try to avoid conflict with clients, with employees. It was a great model for me.
Well, conflict is also inevitable, right? Like these are construction projects. You talked on the last podcast you were on about how, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable for these homeowners to have a porta potty in their driveway and have a whole bunch of guys that they don't know in their backyard at 7 a.m. So, kind of setting the expectation, but also acknowledging the fact like, there's gonna be hiccups. There's gonna be hard decisions. There's gonna be roadblocks for us. And I can totally see how, like, a calm, measured approach that's more just even keel helps to de-escalate those like peaks and valleys. Can you think of a time that you really kind of were able to either like help someone through something that was going wrong, or think of a project where you're like, yeah, it started like this, but at the end of it the client was super happy. So maybe there's something there, a project that comes to mind, or a personal kind of achievement you've gotten to the other side of, where you're like, this really is a good example of how that more mild approach served me.
I think a specific example doesn't immediately come to mind. Maybe it will here in a moment. But generally, what we try to remember is that everybody has a different communication style. And often, when someone is upset or mad, it's not at you, it's at something else in their life or some other person in their life. And you just so happen to be in the crosshairs at that time. And so, what we really try to do is compartmentalize the the client's emotions over here and remember that, we still have to get this project done. Also, we try to remember that this is a disruptive, expensive, invasive, exciting, nerve-wracking experience. Sometimes this is the most money someone has spent aside from the purchase of their home. We're on property sometimes for 6, 8 months, possibly even longer. I don't care how much you want this done and how much you like me, you still want us gone eventually. And so we try to be mindful of that and remember that this is what we do every day. But for the client, this is something that is unique and a unique experience. And we have the ability to try to make that experience a little bit better, whether that's through over communicating, whether that's through insulating the client from issues on the project. Like you said, construction is fraught with unknowns and issues. Well, one of the reasons I think someone would hire us, or why we would bring value to a project, is absorbing all that and saying everything's great, and so it's that
Mhm.
forward facing, everything's great. When in behind the scenes, it's the duck on the pond, right? It looks all calm on the top,
Sure.
but underneath the water, there's some frantic movement.
Sure.
Well, we want to protect the client from that, and hopefully they can have a positive experience.
With these larger scale projects, there's also a tendency, at least I've noticed as I've grown and scaled my business, of the feeling of having almost too many cooks in the kitchen. And as the owner and kind of principal designer of your group, it's very parallel to me with my team. How do you navigate that? Again, the duck on the water, calm to the client, but I mean, even before we popped on this podcast, I could hear you're making voice memo texts. Like we're communicating, things are going around. Like there's emails sent out, texts, all these things. How do you ensure that your team collaboration is working as a leader? Because I think that leadership and collaboration get pitted sometimes against each other when really for me they're so linked. They're so linked. Talk to me about how those feelings and what how you consider the roles of each. When to be a leader, when to be a collaborator.
Well, I think it starts with certainly it starts with me. It starts with setting boundaries. One of the most important things for us is a work life balance.
Yeah.
So, how that manifests itself is being very aware of how and when we communicate, controlling that communication to typical business hours and being respectful of each other. And when I'm respectful to one of my employees, then they're going to get it back. They're also going to model that to the clients themselves, and likely they're going to get that back. When we model that at the very outset of a project, we set the expectation. And as soon as, if we get somebody that kind of comes in hot, we'll try to gently redirect and let them know, hey, we're going to keep this conversation to a phone call instead of email. Tone gets lost on email. So again, as you know, it starts with us. We have those uncomfortable conversations first to help others know how to react in those situations. So again, it starts with setting those boundaries with communication and goes from there.
There's so many great books on this topic. I feel like you and I have similar taste in leadership books. I know we both read the what am I thinking? I'm forgetting the title now. The hospitality book. The one that
Oh,
we just talked about.
unreasonable
Killing me.
hospitality.
Unreasonable hospitality. That's the one. Unreasonable hospitality. Leaders eat last is also a favorite one of mine. Habits, why we
Same.
do what we do in life and business. Are there little nuggets of things that you've picked up either in the hospitality space or just business owner space that you're like, man, if I could have told myself this 10 years ago, I would have saved myself a lot of trouble.
I think again from my upbringing, there's always been, maybe I haven't been able to put a name to it or mission statement, but I think there's always been a little bit of that going
Sure.
on. I don't remember the book, but years ago somebody said, okay, you need to determine your why. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing? So I wrote this probably 6 years ago, and it was I'm driven and motivated by creating and causing pleasure and happiness through experiences. How do I do that? I use design, travel, and food as my medium. Okay. So you figure out what is it that jazzes you up, gets you out of bed in the morning, makes you happy. And then you say, okay, well, what do I need? What are the ingredients to make that experience happen? And you put those two things together and that's what drives you. So we all have our things that we're into. And for me, it really drilled down that I love cooking a good meal for somebody. In fact, I was this close to going to culinary school,
You still can,
and
Ryan. You still can.
I probably
I'll meet you there.
when I was 19, I was looking into it significantly, and I was working in restaurants as well as working with my dad, and I interviewed like four different chefs, from a Michelin chef to a sushi chef to the chef at the hotel, to try to get different experiences. And the through line was, don't bother going to school. Go work in a restaurant, make salads, cut onions, just put your time in. So that was one of the through lines. The other through lines was, do you want to have tough interpersonal relationships and work when everybody else is having fun?
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want that.
Ah.
And so I pivoted, obviously, and I still love to cook and entertain. We do a big crab boil every year for like 80 to 100 people. And there for 3 days in advance, getting everything set up, and I love it. It's chaos. Um, but I really enjoy doing that. And so when you bring that back to what we do for our clients, we're not just trying to make them a beautiful landscape. We don't just want to be a vendor, a box that our clients check. We really want to make their experience great and try to give them something that they're proud of and that they use and enriches their life. So it's a little more than just putting some plants in the ground, pouring some concrete.
And it's just for me, this is such the epitome of like California living lifestyle. Like I'm a third generation Californian at this point. Like my family is so Southern California, like to our core, but so much of my upbringing and the experience to me of living here is that indoor outdoor bleed, is that summer kitchen, is the time by the pool, is the big eating a big meal when you're soaking wet because you just did a cannonball and you're like 5 years old and you're gnawing on corn. And entertaining and food, I think I love that that is part of your personal mission because it's so evident in what you design that it's catered towards creating those moments, creating those memories for people. Like you said, it's not ticking a box. It's not just, oh, we have to do landscape done. And it's also not that you're doing it to chase these like crazy high international awards. Like everybody likes getting awards. Don't get me wrong, loves getting a cover of Sunset Magazine like you have. But it seems like you're coming at it from an angle of like, how are these people actually going to live here? How are they actually going to enjoy this space and use this space?
Yeah.
Are those a lot of the questions that you're asking in the discovery process? Like when you do that first site visit, maybe you can walk us through some of the questions that you're asking your clients to like figure that part out. Like how do they use their space?
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to just touch on what you said. So in the 50s, there's a landscape architect, pretty famous in the mid-century scene here in California, named Thomas Church, and his book, which has become sort of a classic, is called "Gardens Are for People," and it's like, yes, of course they are, but not everybody thinks that way. Sometimes it's gardens are for creating an ecological environment for
Sure.
biodiversity. Is that well? In the context of what we do in my company, we really try to reflect that ethos. Gardens are for people and they're for experiencing and for a transformative experience, right? Or they are to help and enrich life. So that's that. Um, Maybe you can ask me your question again really quick.
Sure. Yeah. What are the questions that you're asking when you're on site? You're doing a site visit with a potential new
Right.
client. What good questions do you ask that clues you and your team into how they actually live and use in the space? Because everyone's like, oh, entertaining. But does everyone really mean entertaining? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, how do you get at the core of what they're after, even if they don't even know what they actually are asking for yet?
Yeah, real good. So first off, I'd probably talk as little about the landscape as possible. I am asking them questions about themselves. I'm looking around, I'm observing the interaction, 90% of the time between the husband and the wife.
Uh huh.
I'm seeing how they live. I'm trying to kind of read between the lines. Um, yes, I'll ask if they entertain. Surprisingly, not a lot of people entertain. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, or if they do, it's modest, right? Couple of couples
Sure.
coming over. And so, we're not necessarily designing their space to throw 50-person parties every weekend. But
Sure.
yeah, so we're asking how or if they entertain. We're asking how they want to use the space. If they have a young family, we're trying to remind them that gardens are not static. They need to evolve with your family.
Yeah.
So we know you want it to be incredibly safe and insulated right now, but as your kids get a little bit older, do you still want that sort of antiseptic, you know, zero maintenance kind of a
Sure. Sure.
thing?
Sure. 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 Sure.
So we're trying to read between the lines, and you know, some people are doing a project to increase the value of their home. We saw that a lot during COVID. Some people really just want to extend their livable space. Here in Encinitas, probably the average lot is like 7,000 square feet. Maybe 10. So if you have a 2,000 square foot home and a driveway and some other stuff, like you have a lot of room to increase your livable square footage. So, and that's incredibly valuable. So we're asking how do they live? Do they work from home? Do they anticipate the home becoming a rental? Uh, multi-generational
Yeah,
living. So we're asking a lot of those questions, but a lot of that doesn't even need to be asked, right? It needs to be observed. And so we're doing a lot of observing, a lot of writing of notes, a lot of trying to read between the lines. And generally speaking, we're not talking about, well, what's your favorite color? What kind of
sure,
plants do you like?
sure.
At this point, if they've had us come out to their home, they've already looked at our portfolio, and ideally they're on the level with the types and styles of projects that we do. So really what we're trying to figure out is how can we meet their needs? And then of course the B word, budget, right? We're having that conversation as early as humanly possible. And I don't run away from it. I'd like jump right into it because I don't care who you are, you have a budget. Even if you
Sure.
don't have a budget, you still do because we attach value to things differently. So somebody that has all the money in the world, they might not see the value in it. And if they don't, then it's going to be an uphill battle, even though they technically, quote unquote, don't have a budget.
Mhm, mhm. I think this is a nice segue over as well to some of your projects that you've done that actually aren't residential projects. You've had the opportunity to work with some restaurants here in San Diego, and as soon as you said like, "Oh, the lots aren't that big," like we want to try to make maximum impact, my brain immediately went to like campfire. That lot is teeny, teeny, tiny, and the fact that you were able to pull off like the plants and some of the design surrounding some of these great restaurants that really are starting to make a splash and put San Diego, especially Carlsbad, on the map in a culinary type of way. Talk to
Yeah.
us about those projects, what the approach was. I think these are such a great illustration of your breadth of style, but also showing consistency, which I'm always talking about with our clients and talking about on the podcast is like, how can you show people that you have range while keeping things still feeling true and feeling authentic to your design sensibilities? But give us the whole story of the restaurant projects and how that all came about.
Well, so we've worked on four restaurants for one restaurateur here in Carlsbad, John Resnick, and we worked on his personal home, a couple of his personal homes as well. And I really view us as a supporting cast member when it comes to the restaurants. There's a vision and a plan that is years in the making. For example, Wildland that just opened, we started that project well over 4 years ago, maybe even almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
And it's not that it took 5 years for us to design it, it's that it took five
Sure.
years for the project to be fully realized. And so I think it takes us looking at projects from a different time horizon and also being a part of a collaborative process. Often when we're on a residential project, we might be the only design professional, only contractor there. On a project like this, it's like a football team. And so
Sure.
we're looking to the
Sure.
quarterback, we're looking to the offensive coordinator. Hey, tell us what to
Yeah.
do. We'll do it. Oh, by the way, have you thought about this? And now that we've worked with John on several projects, I think I know he values our input, but we know when to insert that input and when to back off and say, well, maybe we don't quite understand the dynamic that's going on here. I mean, when you have a public space, you have ADA requirements that aren't a thing on
Of
residential
course.
projects. You have ABA, alcohol and beverage requirements that aren't a thing on residential projects. You have so many other variables that you can look at as hindrances, or you can look at as like, oh, this is just another obstacle that is eventually going to make
Opportunity.
the end
Sure, sure,
product
sure.
better. And so that's what we try to do.
What's
And it's been so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine like from a person who's like loves these restaurants and for anyone who's not in San Diego, maybe you can just tell us what each of them are and what their distinct vibe is between each one. As you've heard me say time and time again on this podcast, what worked in 2024 for social media management is not the same as what's going to cut it in 2025. Platforms are shifting, algorithms are chaotic, and keeping up feels like playing whack a mole in the wild, wild west. That's exactly why we made our 2025 social media webinar. This is the deck that we actually sent to our clients. It's 65 slides long. And in the 45-minute webinar, I basically walk you through all the platforms, who owns them, their involvement with the current political administration, what are the pros and cons of each platform, what content performs best, as well as what our team would need for strategy, content creation, and posting and engagement to run the strategy on behalf of your brand. So whether you're a small business owner looking to work with us, or you're also a social media manager or creative just trying to get a better grip of the social media landscape, this is a resource you're going to want to take advantage of. You want to head to our website, MKW Creative Co/resources. So mkwcreative.co/resources. This is the 2025 social media webinar. And just for you, I included the one pager reference guide that we've also sent to our clients to really give you the full menu of options in one big flash sheet. So take advantage of it or hit the link in the show notes to get access to our 2025 social media webinar, because it is wild out there and you shouldn't have to figure it out by yourself. Good luck. Enjoy. But what I find interesting, or I guess what my curiosity is this the chicken and the egg scenario? Like, which comes first? Does like the concept and the menu come first and then you guys come in? Or are you helping? You mentioned collaborative 5 years. I'm thinking like, okay, so you might have been plugged in like even before these ideas were fully realized. What excites you about that? And yeah, if you could just run through each one and kind of note what you perceive as like the differences between each, that'll help. That'll help the people who aren't from here understand.
Sure. So there's 4 restaurants. You've got Campfire, which is John's sort of flagship first solo project there in Carlsbad, and it's what it sounds like. It's everything sort of wood fired and thematically, but not kitschy. You've been there. You know how it is.
Yeah,
It's very much influenced by fire. Even the drinks will have
sure.
elements of fire roasted this or that. There's definite camp vibes, and the whole feeling of the space is communal and kind of like a really fun adults camp. Obviously, they're friendly for kids too. But so Campfire's how it started. His sophomore attempt was June and Jolie, which now is Michelin rated, and that is a classically French restaurant, but with influences from coastal areas around the world that also have French influence. So thinking Ivory Coast and thinking obviously France. And I'm probably butchering this a little bit, but a beautiful restaurant. Mostly it's a prefix menu. And then you can, add supplements and a wine tasting as well. They do a beautiful brunch as well. After those 2 restaurants was sort of the big new concept, which you've got Wildland in the front, which is a fast casual during the day and a seated menu at night. Beautiful breads and sandwiches and pizzas during the day, and at night some wonderful pastas and again beautiful steaks cooked in a pizza oven. Really fun, communal. Also, definitely a place to meet and have a cup of coffee in the morning out on the patio. And then the baby sister in the back, which just opened about a month ago to some pretty stellar reviews, is Lilo. And Lilo is a little bit of a masterpiece, I think. It's a beautiful restaurant in and of itself, but the experience, I think, is something that I feel that we did have a part in, albeit maybe a small part, but we had a part in it. And so what happens when you go to Lilo, there'll be 2 seatings, I believe, a night. There's 23 seats. You'll go in and you'll have your welcome cocktail, your welcome amuse-bouche, and you'll be on sort of one side of the patio. And they'll sort of, get you in the mood, get you in the zone. It's like culinary foreplay, right? And then they move you into the restaurant and you're seated and you're watching the whole thing. It's like an orchestra in there, and you're watching not only the chefs, but the commis and the sous and everybody doing their thing right there in the middle of the restaurant. When you're done with your meal, it's not done because you don't want to like peak and then fall right off and hop in your car and go back home.
Sure.
So they bring you outside
Be
and there's
back on
some
the
fire.
streets of Carlsbad. Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's some fire pits and there's some after dinner drinks, and it helps you kind of wind down after the meal. So it's a whole experience. And those bookends of that experience are in a very intimate walled garden. You wouldn't really expect it because it's kind of in the back of a parking lot. Doesn't sound very sexy, but when you're
Sure.
in there, it's beautiful. So that whole experience kind of is the introduction and the conclusion to this culinary experience. And so those are the 4 restaurants. We had a small part in each one, and really feel privileged to be a part of it because, as I've mentioned, I'm super into the food scene. And so to just be a part of it on a small level was a huge privilege.
Well, and food and design have so much in common, right? Like you talk about texture and contrast and color and form and line and shape and flow. Like these are all things that the greatest chefs are thinking about, right? They're thinking about the detail of how are you plating this? What's your flatware? What glassware do you use to present this type of cocktail or dessert, etc. My friends and I just went to 24 Suns, which has been started by the guys that left Addison, and also fascinating menu because talk about like the link between food and plant. Like here these guys are doing a rotating menu 24 times a year. Like you have to have that intense like respect and understanding of plants and how we consume and how we give back, and like the whole ecosystem of it to me is so obviously related between like food and design, especially with landscape, right?
Yeah.
If you could explain kind of maybe in two or three adjectives your approach to the design for each of those restaurants, so maybe we'll go backwards, like Lilo, Wildland, Juna Jolie, and Campfire. What would be those like adjectives that really sum up kind of what your design approach was with each project?
Wow.
You knew I
I
was
would
going to put you
say,
on the spot.
yeah. I would say with Lilo, again, serving in a supportive cast role, what we were trying to do is create a oh gosh, I don't know, an adjective.
Seems kind of like a mirror to the food, right? Like it seems in each instance you're trying to kind of pull whatever the themes or kind of the big overarching idea is. How do we mirror this the experience part or accentuate the experience via the built environment?
I think
I don't know.
accentuate a great word. When we go into like a theme park, right, like Disneyland or something
Yeah,
like that, the views, the sounds, the sights, the smells, they're all tailored towards transforming you from wherever you were to here you are now, and forget about outside these walls. And so, again, I think the materials that we specified along with John and the plant material was meant to be transformative and to really, I think, like send cues to all of the
sure.
senses of, hey,
Sure.
you're about to have a really cool experience.
Okay,
And
cool.
and part of that is not overdoing it either. And
Uh-huh.
the restaurant itself, the drinks, the food, the lighting, the sounds, that's hitting, you know, everywhere. And so you don't necessarily need the plant material to do the same thing. So again, I think we're trying to provide a supporting role to the architecture, to the food, to the general ambiance. So I mean that was the mode for Lilo. For Wildland, it was like, come on in, right? That
Inviting.
was the
Yeah.
vibe. Like we wanted people to from down the street to be like, was there a tree there before? Like we brought in a huge tree in the front to
Yeah.
really soften the facade of this old kind of Quonset-ish
Warehousey looking.
warehouse
Yeah.
looking building. And just again, like really earthy, organic, like come on in. It's wild. Like the menu, the place was supposed to be evocative of the coast. And so we wanted it to feel that way. So we've got grasses, nothing that should be clipped or hedged, movement. And again, when you're
Free
in there
flowing.
to feel kind of flowy. For June, it's the feminine. It's all about, I think, feeling light and airy and pretty and being around pretty things and pretty food and pretty people and a pretty building. And it's very much the feminine to camp, which is
And
more
if
the masculine. And I don't know if that's how John
Sure. For
intended it.
me, Juna
So
Jolie is like no, I think any interpretation is a fair interpretation, and having eaten at both many times, for me, Juna Jolie is very, delicate. Like, it feels very like you said, light and airy and coastal and very, like, salty, marine, but in a
you,
delicate sense, not in, like, an overpowering sense.
you're saying it so
Whereas with
much better than
Campfire, you
me.
definitely
Yes.
do have more of that, like, rugged. Hey, listen, this is the job. The rugged, rustic, masculine, like with the leather and rope and canvas and like Boy Scouty. Like it just, I
Yeah.
think they are such the two sides to the same coin in a way.
Yeah.
But the attention to detail is top notch. I've talked about campfire so many times on this freaking podcast, because it is that. It is that. And I think that what is so nice about what you just described is like that kind of sensory orchestra, right? Like we're creating this immersive environment where every single sense is kind of like played with in a way that it's not overpowering and you're not like inundated and just blasted with too much, which I think so many of us are with like social media or even like a Disneyland experience. Like you leave Disneyland, you have like a hangover. You're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted because you're just getting like assaulted with like colors and sounds and people and chaos in a lot of ways. And I don't feel that any of your projects have that. Like that's definitely not what we're talking about with immersive, but in a way that just kind of makes you go like, like the nice hotel. So again, bring it all the way back to the beginning, that's similar to like the La Valencia feeling, right? It's like rooted
Yeah.
in a sense of place. There's a history, there's an attention to detail, there's a play of masculine, feminine, there's a connection to history and culture of like the Spanish element of all of this, the Mexican element of all of this, like being in Southern California. What things about your job get you excited to kind of wrap this whole episode, if we could, in a nice bow? What are the things that you're like, man, this really gets me fired up and excited to design and excited to build?
Well, first, no conversation about those restaurants is complete without giving all praise and due honor to Bells and
Oh, of
Whistles,
course.
which is that
Of
they
course.
are they're so amazing. And so to kind of answer your question, I get really excited about working with firms like Bells and Whistles, which is a
Yeah.
really accomplished and known design firm out of LA. Working with talented people who are humble and approachable and collaborative is probably the most fun because that rising tide lifts
Yep.
the ship of the project, right? So I love that. Like I said before, I love travel. So traveling and seeing different gardens or different spaces gets me really, really excited. And then, we have a project every now and then we get a project that I think is like, oh, we haven't run into that before. And so we have a
Yeah.
project right now where the front yard is in a historic river plain. Well,
Cool.
how do we figure that out? I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out. And it's those
Right.
kinds of challenges, I think, make this job a lot of fun because at the end of the day, we're problem solvers and we get to solve problems with really pretty cool stuff. And if we can solve the problem and at the same time make it aesthetically beautiful, then I think we've done our job.
Absolutely. Well, mirror right back to you because our team feels the same way about working with you guys of people who are like humble, hardworking, motivated, and design like up to the design challenge. That makes our job way more fun as well. So, for anyone who doesn't follow you or know how to find you, please plug yourself. And guys, go check out this work. It's really quite incredible.
Well,
Go for it.
thanks. Yeah, you can find us probably the best way to just see what we're doing lately, and it's been so awesome, especially lately because of you and your talented
Hey,
team. But Instagram at Falling Waters Landscape. That's probably where you're going to see the most up to date projects and information. And then fallingwaterslandscape.com is our website that has about I don't know, 25 or 30 projects, highlights from across the years. And then if you want to get a hold of me, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. You can email me, Ryan at Falling Waters Landscape, and ask your questions or ask
amazing.
anything. Happy to answer.
Ask anything. Wow, that's really opening a can of worms, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ask
Wait, how many
anything.
people is this going out to? No,
How
I'm just kidding.
many who's listening to this? Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Ryan. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to save it, send it to a friend, share it to your stories, leave us a comment. We always love to hear them. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for your time today, Ryan.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.